Hey, it's Rachel. We are about to go on vacation for about a week and a half. One of my to-dos anytime we leave is to prep the garden. Generally, for a food garden, you want 1 inch of rain a week. We just had a 3-inch rainstorm, and most of that moisture is still in the soil. Instead of focusing on some of those things you can do to water your crops while you're gone, I am just going to focus instead on not wasting any water and retaining as much of it in the soil as I can. I'll put in a video, although I'll fast forward it here. Step 1, I did water the beds this morning. I came back through and watered them one more time before weeding. As I went through and weeded, I also removed some spent lettuce and some broccoli, and you'll see as I go that I did cut off those leaves and lay them on the ground to help shield any areas where I had noticed there was quite a bit of weed pressure. So as I was pulling the weeds, I took note of where they were popping up, and I made a point of covering those with some of these broccoli leaves. I also covered an area where I recently put down spinach seed. I want to keep that soil as moist and as cool as possible, and putting the leaves there can help to facilitate that. Moving on to pruning. Pruning improves airflow, helps prevent disease. That's an important reason. It also can be a really good way of preventing too much water loss. Plants lose water through their leaves through transpiration. If you prune off a bunch of the excess foliage on a nice dry day and those wounds heal off cleanly, you will have much less water loss from transpiration from all of that extra leaf area than you would if you had left it on the plant. So my second step was to go through and prune all of the spent chamomile flowers out of this bed. I took out all of these squash leaves that had any kind of powdery mildew on them to help prevent that from taking over the whole garden. And I went through and pruned back a whole bunch of leaves from my pepper plants. As I cut the basil back, it did open up airflow. It also made it really obvious to me that I needed to stake up the pepper plants more than I already had. So you'll see I came through and added a stake and then tied, using my little nylon footies, the pepper stems up to try and get the plants even more up and off the ground and better access to the sun. And I pruned off all of the extra leaves that were blocking light to the plant interior and focused on pruning off the leaves towards the bottom of the plants. While I was at it, I harvested. I did a hard harvest of our chard plants. I took all of the big mature leaves off. And this is much the same logic as pruning. It helps to avoid a lot of transpiration and water loss through that large leaf area. I did harvest one big squash. I harvested any pepper with any sign of red to it, and I harvested all of the tomatoes that showed any signs of ripening. The reason I'm doing a preemptive harvest of not quite ripe peppers and tomatoes is that I am constantly at war with squirrels and birds to get to those crops before they do. There is no way that these things will ripen on the vine while we're gone and be left unmolested by my feathered and furred friends. I am going to go ahead and harvest them now and ripen them inside. Tomatoes need to be ripened in a cooler, like 65, 75 degrees Fahrenheit and dark space. I'll show you how I do that in a second. And peppers should be ripened indoors in a sunny, warm location. So I handle that very differently. You'll notice I also harvested beans as I went, and I harvested a watermelon by accident by bumping into it. I figure if it falls off when I bump into it, it's ripe. So that watermelon and the beans and the squash will all go into the refrigerator. They should be good for a week while we're gone. And then the tomatoes and the peppers I will allow to ripen, as mentioned. For tomatoes, I use this simple Pyrex baking dish that came with a matching lid. I line the dish with a kitchen towel and lay the tomatoes in a single layer on top of it. I place the lid on top to contain the ethylene gas and help promote the ripening. As the ripe tomatoes give that off, they will help the unripe ones to complete their ripening. But I don't seal it completely shut. I want to avoid excess moisture buildup inside. The towel and leaving the lid just a little bit open helps to prevent that buildup of moisture. I then place this container on the tile floor in our pantry where it's cooler. The peppers go in a different dish next to a south-facing window so they can get some sun exposure while we're gone and ripen up. And that massive chard harvest, I will just probably eat tonight, sauteed with dinner. I did a whole video on why I love chard and how versatile it is. The fact that you can take a huge pile of it and saute it down into a reasonable serving is one of the things I like about it. I'm going to take advantage of that tonight. Those are my key 5 pre-vacation garden prep steps: water, weed, mulch, prune, preemptive harvest. If I missed any, please comment below and let me know. Otherwise, I hope this was helpful for those of you that are also going to be on vacation and who don't want their garden to go completely crazy while they're gone. I will post when I get back and tell you how this worked. But based on past years and experience, I'm optimistic. This is my go-to list of stuff to do. Hope it was helpful. Thanks.